In August of 2018, a young woman called 911 just before midnight, hysterical, crying. She said she accidentally shot her boyfriend. Said she was just handing him a gun and it went off. When paramedics arrived, they found 23-year-old Stephen Freeman with a gunshot wound to the chest. His girlfriend was kneeling beside him, begging them to save him. He died a few minutes before midnight. She said it was an accident. Said he was the love of her life. But here is the thing. When police looked around that apartment, they saw food thrown everywhere, signs of a fight, and a woman who smelled like alcohol. And when Stephen's friends found out he had been shot, they were not surprised. They knew exactly who did it. So settle in, because this story is going to leave you furious. Hi, sweet ones. My name is Grandma Kitty, and before we dive in, take a second to subscribe if cases like this intrigue you. It helps me keep these stories coming. And while you're at it, tell me where you're watching from. That's how we find our neighbors here in our little true crime corner. It was August 1st, 2018, just before 11 at night. An ambulance and police car came racing down Sunnybrook Drive in Griffin, Georgia. Now, a few minutes earlier, a hysterical woman had called emergency services. Her name was Mary Katherine Higden. And let me tell you, this woman was a mess on that phone call. She was crying, apologizing, barely able to get her words out. She told the dispatcher that she had accidentally shot her boyfriend. She said she was just trying to hand him a gun and it unexpectedly fired. She said she did not think it was loaded. She was sobbing uncontrollably, gasping for breath, begging, "Please help me, please." When emergency personnel entered that apartment, they found a young man lying on a mattress in the living room, and there was Mary Katherine kneeling right beside him, crying her eyes out. The moment she saw the paramedics, she started begging for help. I mean, this woman was so distraught she could not be calmed down. When officers tried to escort her from the room so they could actually work on this poor man, she flat out refused. She was screaming that she could not lose her boyfriend. But here's the thing. Stephen still had a pulse. He was still alive. So they rushed him to the hospital immediately. Only then were officers able to speak with Mary Katherine. And even that was difficult because she was still in complete shock. She kept repeating the same thing over and over. She did not mean to do it. The gun accidentally discharged. She was just trying to hand it to Stephen. She did not understand how it happened. She was not even aiming in that direction. Now, the gun was a Glock 42, and it shot Stephen right in the chest, just below the neck. And tragically, shortly after arriving at the hospital, Stephen Freeman died. It was just a few minutes before midnight. 23 years old. And just like that, he was gone. Now let me tell you about Stephen, because this young man deserves to be remembered for who he really was, not just how he died. Stephen Freeman was born on January 1st, 1995 in Thomaston, Georgia, but he grew up in Griffin. He was raised in a loving and closely knit family. His parents did everything they could to give Stephen and his brother the best start in life. And let me tell you, it showed. This boy had a truly happy childhood. He was well liked among his peers, had a wide circle of friends, and he had 3 close buddies that he had known since they were kids. You know, the kind of friendships where you grow up together and stay tight forever. Stephen was what I like to call an incurable optimist, always cheerful, always smiling, the kind of guy who walked into a room and just made everyone feel good by being there. You know the type. He loved spending time outdoors, hiking, camping, hunting, fishing. That was his happy place. He felt his best when he was out in nature doing what he loved. And here is something that really tells you what kind of person Stephen was. He had no problems expressing his feelings. He told his loved ones that he loved them all the time. Now, not every young man is comfortable doing that. A lot of guys think it is not cool to say I love you, but not Stephen. He said it whenever he felt it. He had an exceptionally close bond with his mother. I mean, these two were tight. When she decided to go back to school and continue her education, Stephen was so proud of her. He was her biggest cheerleader. And when she finally got that diploma, you know what Stephen did? He wrote her a letter. And the first line of that letter said, "To the most wonderful woman in the world." This young man sat down and wrote his mama a letter, thanking her for everything she had done for him and his brother. He talked about how much he admired her perseverance and dedication. That right there tells you everything you need to know about Stephen Freeman. He was loving, he was grateful, and he was not afraid to show it. So that is who we lost that night. A good son, a good friend, a young man with his whole life ahead of him. And now we need to talk about how he ended up with Mary Katherine in the first place, because this is where the story starts to get complicated. Now, Stephen met Mary Katherine Higden back in high school. She was a year older than him, and from what everyone says, it was love at first sight. These two became inseparable real quick, and at first, they seemed like the perfect match. They shared all the same interests. Mary Katherine loved camping just like Stephen did. She would join him and his friends on trips to the forest or for fishing. She was not one of those girls who was scared of getting dirty or being out in the woods. No, she was right there with them. And here is something important. Mary Katherine knew how to handle firearms. She was comfortable around guns. Stephen's friends accepted her right away, and the couple seemed incredibly happy together. Now, Mary Katherine came from a loving family, too. As a child, she loved being the center of attention. She would entertain guests at family gatherings with singing and dancing. She was full of energy, creative, loved nature and animals. On paper, these two were a perfect match. After finishing school, Stephen and Mary Katherine moved in together. Stephen got a job working for a roofing company. Mary Katherine became a teaching assistant at a kindergarten, just two young people starting their lives together. By 2018, Stephen was 23 and Mary Katherine was 24. They had been together for 7 years. 7 years is a long time when you are that young. That is basically your entire adult life at that point. Now, their relationship was not always perfect. They had occasional arguments. They even broke up briefly at one point, but they always ended up back together. They always decided they wanted to make it work. Throughout those 7 years, they got to know each other's families really well. Mary Katherine would join Stephen's family for Sunday dinners every single week. Stephen's mother treated her almost like a daughter. Both families even spent Christmas together. So, from the outside looking in, everything seemed wonderful. Two young people in love, building a life together, close with each other's families. But here is the thing about relationships. What you see on the outside is not always what is happening behind closed doors. And what was happening behind those doors was about to come out. Now, despite Mary Katherine's tearful explanations about the shooting being an accident, the police were not so sure. See, when they looked around that apartment, they noticed something that did not sit right with them. There was food scattered all across the kitchen counters, and on the floor, too. It looked like someone in a fit of rage had thrown everything within reach. That does not happen by accident. That happens when someone is angry, really angry. And there was something else. Mary Katherine's breath smelled like alcohol, and she was occasionally mumbling things that did not make sense. So the police decided to take her down to the station for questioning, and she agreed to go voluntarily. During the interview, she kept insisting it was an accident. She repeated that she loved Stephen, that he was the love of her life, her best friend. She said she would never hurt him. She mentioned that hunting and firearms were their shared passion. That is why they had guns at home. About 10 guns, actually, mainly hunting rifles. But she said they were never loaded. According to Mary Katherine, she was very surprised when the gun went off. But here's where things get interesting. During that interrogation, Mary Katherine used a particular phrase. She said, "When I threw the gun to Stephen, it had fired." Wait a minute. Threw the gun? See, that was different from what she said at the scene. Back at the apartment, she told officers she handed the gun to Stephen. Handed it, not threw it. Now, that might seem like a small detail, but to the police, it was huge because those are two very different things. And here is the thing that really made the police suspicious. Mary Katherine was not just some random person who did not know anything about guns. No, this woman had significant experience with firearms. Besides working at the kindergarten, she was also employed part-time at a local gun shop. She often bragged about knowing more about guns than the average person. She even said she knew more than her boyfriend. As a gun shop employee, she was trained not only in handling firearms, but in all the safety procedures too. So you are telling me that someone who works at a gun shop, someone who knows all the safety rules, someone who brags about how much she knows about guns, just threw a loaded weapon at another person? The police were not buying it, not for 1 second. They decided to change their approach. They got more aggressive with her. They told her straight up that they did not believe a word she was saying. They told her to stop lying and tell the truth. They said they knew there'd been a fight between her and Stephen. The state of that kitchen made that pretty obvious. When the officer raised his voice and the whole tone of the conversation changed, Mary Katherine started to cry. And then, according to the investigators, she said something that changed everything. She supposedly admitted that she pulled the trigger in a fit of anger. Now, I say supposedly because this is where things get messy. The investigators thought they had wrapped this case up nice and quick. Suspect confessed, case closed, let us all go home. But here is the problem. There were technical issues in that interrogation room that day. The whole conversation was recorded, yes, but when they played it back, you could not hear what anyone was saying. There was this constant noise that drowned out all the words. The confession could not be heard. You have got to be kidding me. The most important piece of evidence in this whole case, and it is completely useless because of some technical glitch. But they arrested Mary Katherine anyway, charged her with murder. They figured they had enough other evidence to prove she did it. First, they believed that gun was definitely loaded that night, and here is why. There was grease found inside the gun. Now remember, Mary Katherine admitted she had prepared a meal for Stephen that evening, his favorite roast beef. And investigators found pieces of that roast scattered all over the kitchen. Their theory was that Mary Katherine loaded that gun after she finished cooking. She handled the greasy food, then she handled the gun. That grease transferred right onto the weapon. This was looking like it was planned, not an accident. But the real bombshell came when investigators started talking to the couple's friends. And this is where the story takes a dark turn. It became very clear that this relationship was far from perfect. In fact, Stephen's friends admitted something that shocked the investigators. When they heard Stephen had been shot, they were not surprised at all. They immediately knew who was behind it. They suspected Mary Katherine right away. But why? Why would his friends immediately assume his girlfriend shot him? Because it was not the first time she had pointed a gun at him. Let me say that again. This was not the first time Mary Katherine had pointed a gun at Stephen. It had happened several times before, and Stephen had told his friends about it directly. Now, the early years of their relationship were happy. They really did seem like a perfect match. But over time, things changed, and not for the better. According to Stephen's friends, Mary Katherine became increasingly possessive, emotionally unstable, and honestly, just dangerous. She would yell at Stephen in front of other people. She would push him. Arguments became a daily thing. Stephen would frequently have to leave their apartment just to get some peace. And even then, she would not leave him alone. He had to block her number because she would call him over and over and over again. One of Stephen's co-workers testified that Mary Katherine once called Stephen 30 times before they even started work in the morning. And this was not a one-time thing. This happened multiple times. 30 calls before work. That is not love. That is obsession. On April 21st, 2018, just 3 months before Stephen died, he sent a text message to a friend. He said that Mary Katherine was running around screaming at the top of her lungs, threatening to shoot herself and to shoot him. But it was about a month later that Stephen became truly scared. He told a friend that even though Mary Katherine had aimed a gun at him several times before, there was something different this time. He saw something in her eyes, something that terrified him. He was convinced that this time she was actually capable of pulling the trigger. Can you imagine living like that? Being scared that the person you live with might actually shoot you? Eventually, Stephen had enough. He decided he was done with this emotional roller coaster. He was going to end the relationship for good. He made a plan. He was going to move to another city and share an apartment with a friend. He was going to collect his belongings while Mary Katherine was at work so he would not have to see her. He was not going to tell her in advance. On August 3rd, he was supposed to finally be free from her. But that never happened because he was shot 2 days before he could escape. 2 days. If he had just held on for 2 more days, Stephen Freeman might still be alive today. Now, Stephen never reported any of the previous incidents to the police himself, but here is something interesting that came out during the investigation. The authorities had been called to that couple's home 5 times in the past year. 5 times, and several of those incidents were domestic disputes. The signs were all there, but nobody stopped what was coming. On July 30th, just 2 days before the shooting, Stephen and Mary Katherine were still exchanging sweet text messages, wishing each other a good day, saying, "I love you." That is how toxic relationships work sometimes. One day, everything seems fine, and the next day, all hell breaks loose. And the next day was definitely not fine. They had another argument on the night of July 30, first going into August 1st. This one was bad enough that Stephen left. He went to stay at his friend's place. He was ignoring Mary Katherine's calls and texts. He even told his mother that he was not going back to that apartment. He said he was just tired of it all. He was done. The next day, August 1st, Mary Katherine decided to prepare dinner for both of them. His favorite meal, that roast beef I mentioned earlier. She was hoping they could sit down together, talk things out, and make up like they always did. But Stephen was not responding. He did not come home. He was still ignoring her calls. And this only made her angrier. She tried to find out where he was. She called Stephen's mother, who told her that Stephen was staying with his friend Thomas. So Mary Katherine got in her car and drove toward Thomas's apartment. She was not going to let him go that easily. On the way there, she spotted Thomas's car with both men inside. She followed closely behind them at first. Then she pulled up alongside them and opened her window. Stephen had no choice but to roll his window down too. Mary Katherine started yelling at him, demanding to know if he was finally going to come home. And Stephen, probably just wanting to avoid another scene, told her to calm down. He said he would go with her. That was a mistake, a terrible mistake, because 2 hours later, an ambulance was rushing Stephen to the hospital with a gunshot wound to his chest. Mary Katherine was charged with murder, assault, and using a firearm to commit a felony. The prosecutor offered her a plea deal. She would go to prison, but she would have the possibility of parole. She rejected the offer. She wanted to go to trial. She was going to fight this. The trial began on June 17th, 2019. Now, before I tell you what happened in that courtroom, if you are still with me, go ahead and hit that like button, because what you are about to hear is going to make you want to throw something at your screen. Trust me on this one. The prosecutor's goal was simple: prove that Mary Katherine killed her boyfriend in cold blood, driven by anger. They presented the evidence: the greasy marks on the gun, the stains on the bedsheet that suggested Stephen was shot while he was sitting on the bed. He was not standing up, he was not moving toward her. He was just sitting there. And then he fell backward onto the mattress, which is exactly where they found him. The bloodstains were only in one area of the sheet, right there in the corner of the bed. He never saw it coming. Friends, family, and co-workers of Stephen all testified, and they all said the same thing. This relationship was toxic. The couple argued constantly. Mary Katherine had threatened Stephen with a gun before. She was possessive and problematic. The prosecutor also pointed out something very important. Mary Katherine had changed her story 6 times during this whole process. Every time she told it, something was different. Details were added or changed, and she was about to change it again, because now Mary Katherine was claiming something she had never mentioned before. She said she was innocent. She said that on the night of August 1st, she acted in self-defense. Self-defense. After everything we just heard, now she is saying she was defending herself. Her defense attorney got up and painted a completely different picture of this relationship. The lawyer argued that behind closed doors, Stephen was a completely different person, that there was a side to him that nobody else knew about. According to the defense, Stephen had a long history of abusing Mary Katherine. He was aggressive, impulsive, jealous. He controlled everything about her life: what she wore, what she ate, how she spent money, where she went. They claimed he would hit her on the back of the head, that he once kicked her off the bed so hard that she hit her head on the door frame. The defense also suggested that Stephen had problems with alcohol and other substances, which made his aggressive behavior even worse. As evidence, the lawyer presented 63 pages of text messages that Stephen had sent to Mary Katherine about a year before the shooting. These texts were pulled from her old phone. Now here is the context. During one of their breakups, Mary Katherine had slept with one of Stephen's friends. When Stephen found out about this, he was furious, and he sent her a bunch of angry, threatening, vulgar messages. One time he even sent her a photo of himself holding a dead fish with the caption, "This is you." So, yes, Stephen sent some terrible messages when he found out his girlfriend cheated on him with his friend. That is not okay. But does that mean he deserved to be shot? Mary Katherine took the stand herself. Through tears, she told the jury what her relationship with Stephen had supposedly been like. She said whenever she tried to stand up for herself, Stephen would warn her that she would face twice the punishment if she did. She testified that every morning she had to prepare his clothes, make sure they were folded and placed in a specific spot. She had to have the bathroom ready so Stephen could just step in and take a warm shower. According to her, Stephen constantly accused her of cheating, and during arguments, he would grab her wrists, shake her, sometimes even hit her. Her lawyer read some of Stephen's text messages out loud in court. Messages like, "The more you say, the worse it will be for you when I get home." And, "I miss you so much. I am coming home to you. You are about to get it bad. And you might end up in the red room tonight." The red room. When the lawyer asked what that meant, Mary Katherine explained that was where the less gentle things happened. She said Stephen would tie her up, choke her, hit her. She claimed there were 2 times when Stephen went too far and did not stop when she asked him to. One of these incidents supposedly happened after a trip to Disneyland. She said Stephen was exceptionally aggressive that day. And when she begged him to stop, he said that since he had spent so much money on her at Disney, he deserved to get what he wanted. Now, according to Mary Katherine, it was this fear that made her react the way she did on the night of August 1st. She testified that she told Stephen she did not want to be with him anymore, and this sent him into a rage. He started throwing the food she had prepared, pushing her around. She said that is when she grabbed the gun and told him to get out. She claimed Stephen lunged at her, and the next thing she knew, he was standing there injured, telling her to call 911. She said everything happened so fast, in a split second. She insisted she never wanted to hurt him. She never intended to kill him. But here is the problem with her whole story. This was the first time she ever mentioned any of this. During the police interrogations right after the shooting, she never said a word about Stephen lunging at her. She never mentioned any abuse, nothing. It was only now, in the courtroom, that all these details suddenly came out. The prosecutor called her out on this immediately, asked her why she never reported any of this abuse to the police. Mary Katherine said she always blamed herself. She thought she should have tried harder not to provoke Stephen, and she said she was too embarrassed to tell the investigators about the violence in their relationship. Convenient excuse, if you ask me. But the prosecutor was not done. She had a surprise of her own. Data from Mary Katherine's phone showed that just hours before she shot Stephen, she was browsing some very disturbing websites, adult content featuring violence and aggression. And she was doing this while she was at work, at a babysitting job, while caring for someone else's child. The prosecutor argued that if Mary Katherine had really been traumatized by violent acts like she claimed, why would she be searching for that kind of content? Mary Katherine tried to explain it away. She said she was looking for ideas to please Stephen. Since he was the one who liked the Red Room stuff, she was trying to find new things for him. But wait, so the man who was allegedly abusing you, you were trying to find new ways to please him while you were babysitting? Something does not add up here. The prosecutor also pointed out that Mary Katherine had said she never pointed a gun at Stephen before, but then later she admitted that yes, she had held a gun during arguments a few times. But she claimed she was only threatening to hurt herself, not him. And that part was actually true. Mary Katherine had repeatedly threatened to take her own life. Her own father confirmed this. And Stephen's loved ones believe that is exactly why he stayed with her as long as he did. He was afraid that if he left, she would actually hurt herself. He stayed because he was worried about her, and it cost him his life. The defense brought in an expert witness who testified that Mary Katherine showed signs of battered woman syndrome, but the prosecution brought in their own expert who said the complete opposite, no signs of it at all. Mary Katherine's sister did testify that she had seen marks on Mary Katherine's arms a few times. When she asked about them, Mary Katherine said Stephen had grabbed her too hard. But besides her sister's word and Mary Katherine's own testimony, there was nothing else. No police reports about Stephen abusing her. No medical records. No documentation of any kind. Meanwhile, there were 5 police visits to their home for domestic disputes. Stephen's friends all saying the same thing about Mary Katherine being the aggressor. Multiple witnesses saying she had pointed guns at Stephen before. The evidence against her seemed pretty strong, but here is where the police really messed this whole thing up. That recording of the interrogation where Mary Katherine allegedly confessed, useless. Could not be used in court because of the audio problems. And it gets worse. The officers who first arrived at the scene took the gun and put it in a paper bag. They said they did it for safety reasons because they were worried the hysterical woman might hurt herself. But they did not take any photos first. They did not document where the gun was found or what position it was in. They just moved it. Why did they move the gun instead of just removing Mary Katherine from the room? Nobody knows. And there is more. They never even looked at Stephen's phone. They only had the data from Mary Katherine's phone. So the jury only got to hear one side of the text message conversations. They never got to see what Stephen might have said or what his version of events might have been. The jurors went off to deliberate. 4 hours later, they came back with their verdict. Mary Katherine Higden was found not guilty on all charges. She was completely acquitted. Now, here is what is really going to make your blood boil. After the trial, it came out that most of the jurors actually believed Mary Katherine did it. They believed she shot Stephen. But they did not think the prosecution had proven it beyond a reasonable doubt. They felt the police investigation was sloppy. The moved gun, the useless confession recording, the failure to check Stephen's phone. They said they did not have a complete picture of the relationship. They could only go by what was on Mary Katherine's phone, and that was not enough. On June 26, 2019, Mary Katherine walked out of that courtroom, a free woman. Stephen Freeman is dead. He was 2 days away from finally escaping that relationship, and the person who shot him is walking around free because the police could not do their jobs properly. Stephen's family was shocked, disgusted. They felt completely betrayed by the justice system. His mother now actively participates in anti-domestic violence campaigns, and she always emphasizes something important. Violence does not have a gender. Anyone can be a victim. Women can be abusers too. Men can be victims too. Stephen was proof of that. We will never know exactly what happened in that apartment on August 1st, 2018. Was it really an accident? Was it self-defense like Mary Katherine claimed? Or was it cold-blooded murder by a possessive, unstable woman who could not let her boyfriend go? The jury could not say for sure, but Stephen's friends and family have no doubt in their minds they knew Mary Katherine. They saw the warning signs. They tried to warn Stephen, and now he is gone. Today we remember Stephen Freeman, a young man who loved the outdoors, who loved his family, who wrote his mother that beautiful letter calling her the most wonderful woman in the world. He had dreams. He had plans. He was about to start a new chapter of his life, but he never got that chance. Stephen's story teaches us something important. Domestic violence can happen to anyone. It does not matter if you are a man or a woman. If someone you love is in a dangerous relationship, help them get out. Do not wait. Do not assume they will be fine, because sometimes 2 days is too late. Sometimes tomorrow never comes. Thank you for listening to this story all the way to the end. I know it was a difficult one, a frustrating one. Justice was not served in that courtroom, but we can honor Stephen's memory by telling his story, by remembering who he was, not just how he died. If you made it this far, thank you from the bottom of my heart. If you have not subscribed yet, please consider doing so, and hit that like button if you have not already. Until next time, stay safe out there, trust your instincts, and if you are in a dangerous relationship, please get help. Do not wait. Rest in peace, Stephen Freeman. You deserved so much better. Goodbye for now.